allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yep.
Thank you, Lord, for bringing us all together. Lord, just give us wisdom as we go through the evening. Lord, lay your blessings upon our community and give us a little more rain. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
All right, roll call. Councilman West is absent this evening, but we still have a quorum and we'll proceed with business. First up is to approve tonight's agenda. We do have one modification to the agenda as it was sent out on Friday. George Jennings will not be here to have the discussion on mosquito control, so request that we strike that from this meeting, and that can be rescheduled to a future meeting if he so desires.
Move to approve the agenda with the one alteration that Matt just mentioned.
It's been moved and seconded to approve tonight's agenda with the one deletion. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda approved. Do we have any citizen comments tonight? Sir? Yeah, citizen comment. Would you like to make a comment to council?
I'm sorry. I'm older than what I look like. I didn't hear you. What did you say?
Yeah, citizen comment. So if there's something you'd like to address for the council?
I'm not, I don't live here, but I do have a comment or something that I'd like to say. I don't have any copies for the 2, 4, 5 of you councilmen. So if I could just hand it down, if that's all right. My name's Morris, and I'm going to talk while I hand out, if that's okay. And my occupation was from Dodge City, Kansas. My occupation is, I was the general manager, AG to general manager of the Dodge House Hotel. I don't know if you've ever heard of that hotel. And I just wanted to talk to you in regards to a businessman that is coming into your community. Now, I'm old-fashioned. My dad was in the Army. He served in 3 wars. World War II, he lied, okay, in Korea and Vietnam. But he raised me as with Jesus Christ, to just love your brother man and respect him. And I believe also in, of course, a fair day's work for a fair day's pay, okay? And this businessman here owes me $15,000, in which I have taken out of my pocket for the daily operation of the hotel, the Dodge House Hotel. And basically, he's refused to pay me. You know, if you have a business, and each one of you, I'm sure, have your own business, a farm, or etc. Guy comes in and says, don't worry, I'll take care of it. And it's a verbal word promise. You know, you're expecting. So I've put in for bleach. I'm not using 60 gallons of bleach, etc. But I want you to know what type of businessman is coming into your community. Okay? He's not one to pay, obviously, what's owed. And he hires, and that was one of the things that we got into, is I wanted to pay the housekeepers, you know, what they deserve. 22-year service, a housekeeper that's worked in that hotel for 22 years, and he wants to pay them $9 an hour. So I took out of my pocket and paid most of the housekeepers. That's not what I'm asking for. I was asking for bleach, lawnmower, because I was outside cutting that grass, edging it myself. I don't mind doing a hard day's work, you know, but show me some appreciation. If you say you appreciate me, then pay me what you owe me. And so I just wanted you to see what's coming into your community. so that you can get an idea. You know, he hires illegals, undocumented. He hires foreign students that are on student visas, not work visas, but student visas. And, you know, you don't know who you have. It's just like police officers, you know. We're all raised. You don't know how you're raised. You know, you don't know who you're getting, okay, unless you ask or unless someone tells you. So I just wanted to spend this time to come to your community to let you know, how he treats his employees. You know, we all come from different backgrounds, cultures. And so I just wanted to get you a heads up. My aspect of the 15,000, I'm already, as you have seen, I'm already going into litigation on that. So I'm not here for that. I'm here so you're aware of the businessman that's coming into your community. And that's all I have to say. Unless you have some questions, I don't want to take up any more of your time.
Yeah, thank you for coming in and talking with us.
And I appreciate it. If you want to have copies of that, if you can, if you want. Otherwise, I've got to take it.
That's fine.
Okay. I'm sorry, dear Sir Charlton. I'm actually love to work for a community like this. I love to work for Dot City also. But different strokes for different folks, different cultures, different philosophies. Thank you.
Thank you.
You should have kept that door locked. I wouldn't have stayed there 5 minutes.
Now we at least know we need to have it looked at, I think.
I hope you guys had a good Easter.
You as well.
I hope you had a happy Easter. How about that?
All right, hearing no further citizen comments, we will move on to our consent agenda tonight. That includes the minutes of our March 16th meeting, appropriations ordinance 1313, and a C&B application for the Triangle Rodeo Club, I'm assuming for the rodeo.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second. Been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda approved. All right, moving along to our items of business tonight. First up is ordinance number 1134, and that is actually a rezone of a property here in town from industrial IP1 to R1B residential. Oh.
I'll kick this item off and then turn it over to Christy. Sorry about that. The Planning Commission heard a case regarding the rezoning of the 400 and 500 blocks of North Walnut from industrial to R1B residential. The Walls have applied for that rezoning as they have interest in building a home there. That was heard by the Planning Commission and approved for you now to consider. And this would require an ordinance, which is why you have ordinance 1134 before you for your consideration to approve that rezoning. If Christy can elaborate, or if you have questions, the meeting materials from the Planning Commission and their application were included in your packet.
Before giving you a spiel, do you have any questions? If you've read it and you don't, I won't.
Is that rezoning just for that?
Yes,
So
yes.
everything around
We
it
can't
would
just
not be changed?
rezone the whole area without a whole, there's a whole process to it. So it's, specific, two specific, property owners right now because the deeds haven't transferred. So you have letters from TJ McMurray and, Kai Gamble because that process isn't done yet. But they were in agreement to go ahead and move forward with the rezoning. This couple has been approved for housing, finances, and are just kind of waiting on a couple other things to fall into place, but have already started looking at home, floor plans and things. They had an original idea, it's around town, I know because I've already been they previously lived in Greensburg before the tornado and have been living outside of town and renting, and they want to own again. And so that's kind of what they're wanting to do. They said even if it wasn't approved, they wanted the property, they wanted to clean it up, they wanted to plant some trees, clean up some trees that are dead, and just make the space look better. But the planning commission reviewed their request and on their side is recommending approval of the application. You'll notice in your packet also at the same meeting, there was a site plan review for the co-op of additional building that will be taking place at the co-op site, and it's zoned for what's happening there. So that wasn't the conversation, it was just a site plan review. So they were here for that conversation. They're aware of the additional construction that will be going on up there. The construction that will happen does not produce odor or additional noise issues for them. They were completely fine with it. They're aware of the co-op's current activities. They're farm people. So they didn't have an issue with what was being suggested at the other part of that meeting. So, but if you have any questions, I can try to answer them.
Do we still have operating utility facilities in that area?
Mhm. We'll have to bring electric to them. It's not down that street, but yeah, everything else is there.
Besides the street?
Yeah, and our guys have already started looking at that.
Yeah, I'm
What
not
that
really, I
would
actually was just, Dave, I think the day you sent this out, I was on that road for some reason. And I was like, man, this road's in bad shape,
Yeah,
but with no traffic.
yeah.
Right. And they actually didn't want us to do much up there until they moved because they're thinking a modular, so a truck will turn. And they didn't want us doing anything because they're gonna cut into the street to hook into the sewer and the water and then turn that truck to get the house, whatever they end up with up there. They didn't want us doing anything until, they actually would have liked to purchase the whole half, well, it's not a half block, it's 2 blocks. But clear to the end, they would have loved animal husbandry, but most of the people that they started talking to didn't want to sell for whatever reason, and so they're good with trees and whatever, the area that they have. They're gonna put the house to the, if approved, they're gonna put the house to the north end of the property, just to get a little more distance with them and the railroad track, and some additional tree planting maybe, but, yeah, they're excited to get moved to town if approved, so.
You mentioned there's a difference between a modular and a manufactured home.
Yes, in the way that they're built.
I thought they were both manufactured.
No, so we've got some modular, some really nice houses in town that are considered modular because they're built off-site, but they're stick-built like a regular house.
Okay.
But since they're built off-site and moved in on a truck, just the house behind me, well, actually, Matt's
Yeah.
house is
I know what
I don't think it was it built on site?
My house
Or
wasn't.
moved in? Yours
It
wasn't?
was moved in.
Yeah, yours was moved in, and then the one to the south of Matt was brought in by truck. It was built at a plant and brought in a piece, so. Manufactured is more like, it can be single or double wide, but it's just not the same construction type.
Comes in 2 pieces.
It could, and even these, some of them come in more than one.
My house was 2 pieces.
Yeah, more than one piece.
Garage
It's a
on.
type of construction.
Okay, I was just.
And modular just tends to be more like a stick-built house and just built more sturdy. So,
I just figured they were both
Yeah.
manufactured homes because
Yeah.
they're built off-site and.
yeah, Dodge City has a
Truck the end.
similar rule to what we have. Actually, they're getting it put in place because they've had this problem of people bringing in really old modulars, or not modulars, but manufactured houses, and people invest a lot of money to get them fixed up maybe, but then they still have this old house that wasn't built originally to last that many years. And so, they're having trouble with it. They are actually adopting an ordinance. Theirs is a little more lenient, at 20-year, anything over 20, but this wouldn't have even meant, it wouldn't have even meant that. It's older than 20 years old.
A lot of those homes, I agree with you, are not made to be redone.
Right. Well, their plan, it would have looked very nice, but, it was gonna end up costing them. By the time they looked at the modulars, they said it was gonna be cost effective to just buy new, so.
So we need a motion to approve this ordinance if we're all in agreement with this.
Yeah, and this is really just for the rezoning that would allow them to build a residential home on this
Yeah.
property.
And then they'll be getting us plans after that to get those.
I'd make a motion then to approve ordinance 1134.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded to approve ordinance 1134, which would rezone a portion of North Walnut from industrial to R1B residential. Any further discussion? Ordinance is a roll call vote. Charlton?
Yes.
Trummel?
Yes.
Keaton?
Yes.
Vernon?
Yes.
Ordinance passes 4-0. All right, that takes care of that item of business. And again, our second item of business is no longer on the agenda, so we will move on to number 3, which is a continuation of the discussion for the KPP Energy RFP for the location of those CAT generators.
I don't know that I have any additional information to offer from the last 2 meetings, just continued discussion. This RFP response is due on Thursday if you guys so desire to move forward with that. So just putting it on the agenda for another consideration, and happy to try to answer any questions that you might have.
I will just maybe reiterate what I said last time. I think we should respond to this at the very least at a 0% cost share. I think in that scenario, there's literally no potential downside to the city and potentially a benefit for our citizens and our electric customers. I wouldn't be opposed to putting some money in. I think our reserves are in a healthy enough spot that we can at least contribute a small amount, but that's just kind of my 2 cents in my opinion.
I would echo what Matt says. I don't want to throw a bunch of money at this, but I think putting a little bit in there just to see if we can potentially get this asset. This isn't money just out the door. It's gonna live on, and I know the city's not a business, but it's gonna be on the city's balance sheet of, we're gonna have an asset in our community that would bring infrastructure improvements, especially not just in a tornado where we're out of power for 24 hours, but a big winter storm. And we talk about cities or we talk about streets and street lights, and that's all part of infrastructure, like electricity, and bringing electricity to people's part of it too. And if this lets our businesses stay open, if this lets our citizens continue to function and live normal lives, I think doing a 5 or possibly a 10% match, if that's what it would take to get this for us, would be a huge potential benefit to the future, especially as you talk about energy grid demands going forward with all the buzz of AI and how much electricity that's going to drain. And already in their states where there's black and brownouts where it's like you can't have electricity, and if that alleviates some of that pain for our people that live in our community and our business owners, I'd rather see us spend this than spend a bunch of money on fixing the streets behind the businesses that nobody drives on. I mean, so that we can have semi-parking. And I know we don't want to do that either, but yeah, electricity is infrastructure for sure. And it's not, like Stacey, I asked you, how much money do we have in transformer inventory sitting on hand?
Ballpark minimum $150,000, that we just have extras on hand in case something happens and we need to replace one.
Yeah, and so this would be something that would affect everybody and not just an isolated thing, that we already have $150,000 in inventory sitting there. Again, I don't want to break the bank, and I don't want to put the city in a spot where if we had the need to dip into these reserves, they wouldn't be there. But what would that be? Potentially something where we need a lot of electricity quick, and this would alleviate that concern. So I would be a fan of, at a minimum, doing the 5% match. I would entertain 10%, but whether that was through just going straight to the reserves, or half of it through reserves and the other half through financing. It makes no difference to me, but if we can secure this for our businesses and residents for an unsure energy future, I think it'd be a good idea.
This benefits us if we have a loss of electricity coming in, right, from the east to the west. So if we have infrastructure damage in town, this does us no good whatsoever. If we have infrastructure, electrical line damage in town, a generator does us no good if we can't.
I don't wanna say 100% no, it wouldn't. I think it would kind of depend on the situation, but,
It could be just a certain area.
right, depending on the situation. But like, for instance, yesterday, squirrel suicide, it takes out a small portion of town. That's not gonna help us in that, because a physical repair needs to happen.
But in that instance too, if we have a certain area of town that gets damaged and the generator goes, then we still have to pour money into that to get that back in shape before it can be
Right,
used.
say we have a close call with a tornado and
Sure.
it takes part of town, the west or east side, one of the two, and takes out a portion. Could it be used, if it takes out our transmission coming in also, could it be used then to fire up and power the part of town that's still up and running? I would like to say yes.
Well, most likely if it happens, we've got the transmission coming
Right.
in anyway.
Right,
But, so then it does us no good, that's what I'm saying. We can part of the town,
right,
possibly,
right.
but not all.
But if it's 2007 again,
Yeah.
we got bigger problems.
Yeah.
Well, I think I agree with you, because if we're looking at it from the isolated stance of like we have a weather incident here where it takes out electricity, that really doesn't do us any good, but I think my concern would be for a broader,
Down the roadways.
down the road a ways, or not even a weather event, maybe a winter storm Erie or something like that, where Texas decides, hey, we want all this electricity for us, or whoever, and so they redirect and reallocate the electricity, and they say, sorry, Greensburg, like,
Yeah, there were,
Even though you have
Load
one generator
shedding.
sitting out here, you don't get none of that, it's going
Correct.
somewhere else.
right, and so this
Yeah,
just
I
gives us that
That's
sort of,
possible.
because I agree, like you made the comment a few weeks ago, or a few meetings ago, I guess, like, 24 hours, we can live without it. Well, I agree. It'd be nice if we didn't have to, but we could. But I think the bigger concern is a more long-term, or an outage situation where every Friday, or I don't know, you talk about the people in the more populated areas where it's like, you gotta cut back on energy load every afternoon from 3 to 5. Well, if that prevents that kind of pain for us, or generates revenue because somebody else is feeling that pain and they kick that thing on and we get a portion of that, I think it's a pretty wise investment, not just for our people, but for,
We're not gonna get rich off of it, guarantee you that.
no. But it might justify the 10% or the 5% that we've invested in it.
Take a long time to pay that off. Because we also have to pay for, we do 10%, we gotta pay 10% upkeep, right? And maintenance.
and I think,
They're not just gonna give us the revenue off of it and electricity for nothing.
No, whatever portion of ownership we would have, we would be responsible for maintenance
Right, I
and
thought that's
fuel
what we
of
stated
that
last week,
portion,
yes.
yeah.
I don't think this will ever, quote unquote, pay for itself from a monetary perspective. I think how it would pay for itself is, again, it may not be this month or this year or even this decade, but in the next 20 years, if there is a week-long transmission disruption for whatever reason, whether it's a blackout for the entire grid or a weather event that takes out transmission in our entire region, then it's not paying for itself monetarily, but from our businesses being able to keep their doors open that time, and our residents being able to, live more or less normally for an extended period. It's basically an insurance policy. It's never gonna make you money, but it's kind of good peace of mind to
And I
have.
guess
I don't think that'd be a sales pitch to a person that's setting up a generator in the backyard either.
No, it wouldn't, but
You know?
a lot of our businesses, most of our businesses don't have generators. And, vast majority of our homes don't have generators.
And we have so many people that rent in our community just because of the housing situation. And very few of those people have access to power. Because they're not gonna invest in a generator for their home because they don't own it. And
No, they can't fly fix it. So you want to invest this money in it down the road, okay, we probably ought to quits, utility bill, let's help pay for this, so we'll regain some of its money back, correct?
I don't necessarily think we would need to. If you just look at the balance of our electric reserve fund, it's $600-some thousand at this point, and we're putting $100,000 per year in. I mean, if we just take the 5% number, we could fill that back up with what we're already doing in 2 years, less than 2 years.
If you have no big expenditures in that 2 years.
True.
That's my concern. If we go out of our pocket essentially, and dump, we're 200,000 out of our pocket, and something does hit the fan, whatever, weather storm hits the west side, not the generators, they're fine, but now we have 20 down poles and wire and all that, and we don't have the funds there to finance to fix our own problem.
And we have to call
Now we have
somebody
to
to
go
do
get
this, because we don't have the manpower to do it, so, yeah.
In that scenario, what portions of our electrical distribution are insured? That's a good question.
That's a great question that I don't have a clear answer necessarily to.
Because the hope would be, and again, if we have a weather event taking out a lot of poles and transmission, we're not going out of pocket for most of those costs. We'll have insurance to help pay for it. I think,
And
in
we
my
do have,
mind,
sorry.
that reserve fund is, again, that insurance coverage wouldn't be 100% coverage, so we would have our reserves to cover our portion of that. But for the most part, I think that's there to help pay for transformers as we need to replace and acquire new ones as new construction happens, this, that, and the other. And I think historically, we can look at kind of the rate we spent down that fund, and it hasn't been, I mean, there are things that can get pretty expensive pretty quick, but for the most part, we're not spending $200,000 a year out of that.
No, I think in the last handful of years, we've made 2, maybe 3 purchases out of their poles. We've bought poles a couple times, and I think,
Wasn't that bucket truck partially financed out of that?
yes, and equipment reserve too, if I remember
Yeah, I think it was
correctly.
split. I don't remember
We've
what that
split
was.
between different utilities, if it was a mixed utility use, like maybe the digger, not the digger truck, the back trailer, I can't remember. I would have to go back and look exactly, but we haven't made, I think poles have been the largest purchase we've made out of there, and that's $35,000-$40,000 if I remember right.
26 or something.
Something, yeah.
26, something like that.
But the prices of things continue to go up, but, in a disaster sort of circumstance, we would have insurance to lean on, and then also the infrastructure fund as well. I think we would have potentially some other funds that we could use to assist in a situation like that.
And we could always raise rates then too if we absolutely had to, not that we would want to do that, but we
Right.
could take out a bond if we were really in a bad situation and then raise
Also
rates
true.
just enough to pay that bond off.
And you said we've got 2 different sources of electricity coming in.
Yes.
That we can tap into, so
But,
this only happens if we lose both sources. If we lose both of them, likely we're going to lose ourselves also in the process. Why wouldn't we? I mean,
Not
other than
necessarily.
that one time,
it's happened several times in the last, I would say 3 times in the last 5 years.
3 times where we lost power to both sources.
Yeah.
But
And
we didn't lose our stuff in town.
right in town, we were whole,
Okay.
but it was our feed coming in.
But it shut our town down for a day or more.
Extended, not more than a day, but an extended amount of time.
Several hours to a day, depending on the
Yeah.
occasion.
We're still talking hundreds of thousands of dollars here on the cans. And I'm good with the 0, but spending money on an if, and if we even put this bid in, we may not even get it still.
Yeah.
And then we wouldn't be out the money, right? I mean,
Right.
Correct.
Yeah, we could put 20% in and we might not get it.
Exactly.
There's 24 other member
That's-
cities
Oh,
considering.
That's where I have an issue, putting 20% in, for instance, I never need it.
Well-
and I would agree, I think like that would be
Why don't we
significant.
just find an open truck going down the highway,
But-
throw it in there, and let him go on?
But if everybody sort of approaches it from the same perspective of like, well, we're not gonna put, we don't have any capital in, like if we could throw in 5% or 10%, and that's enough of a push to let them put it here, I think that that would be an incredible investment. And again, I'm not really that concerned from a storm perspective where it knocks us out for 24 hours. I'm more concerned from the future of the energy grid itself and all the things that are getting ready to happen to the state south of us and to the state north of us and to the state east of us. There's gonna be some real strain on this energy grid, potentially, and if we can put in, that's what the reserve funds are for, if we can invest in our infrastructure, or potentially invest in our infrastructure, because nothing's saying that they're actually gonna give us the bid, if we can potentially invest in that, it would be money well spent. Even in the 24-hour period that it's out, that would be nice, but again, my concern is more of a recurring issue where we need that power and don't have access to it.
And I think to Wayne's point, I may have mentioned this at one of the previous meetings, I think Winter Storm Uri was a small taste of what that could look like. Granted, that was a major winter storm event, but I think a lot of lessons were learned in that. And I remember that day, it was President's Day and I was at home and it was very cold. And I was getting emails and I think I actually had a phone call with Mark Chesney that day. We could have had blackouts that day. It was getting really close to that happening. Luckily, they didn't shut us off, but they were talking about starting to do some of that. So I think, just to your point, you know, down the road, that could be a possibility.
I just want to look at all aspects of this, whether it be pro or con, before we're the one that rubber stamp it and say, you shoot, yeah, let's do it. You know,
So
let's get this out of the way so we can purchase something at the next meeting.
if we do it, and there are a bunch of, turns out there are a bunch of hidden costs and for maintenance or whatever, which the way I read it, there really won't be, like it'll be not that much cost. Can we say, you know what, we're glad it's here and we'll just give you our 10% back and they can assume all the maintenance costs and own 100% of it and we'll still have the asset sitting here?
Basically to sell our ownership down the road.
Yeah,
I can't say yes or no to that. That's not a question I posed to them, but I think could be something
I don't know why they wouldn't want it. And have
discussed and
100% of it.
negotiated. You know, if we're 3 years down the road and we say we don't want our 10% stake anymore, we would like to discuss you buying us out, basically. I can't say whether it's a yay or a nay.
But I've also seen it too, that you do like that, treat others under us, I want my 10% back, we're not interested. Well, we can do it, but you're not gonna get your full 10% back, I'm sorry.
But then we still have the value of having the asset here though, and they're gonna turn it on when we're out of power so that they can charge us for the power still. So like it's still a win-win, even if we give it back to them for free, because the goal is to have the asset here for our constituents and residents and business owners.
Well, council, we've had a lot of discussion on this topic, and really tonight's when we have to make a decision, yay, nay, what have you. Are we interested in responding to the RFP at all? Even at a 0% ownership take?
I think at a zero, you're silly not to.
So, sounds like definitely consensus would be to respond to the RFP. Question is, how much, if any, ownership stake would the city be interested in submitting? Wayne, you've said 5 to 10%. Dave, you're kind of on the 0 and no more. Would you be?
I think I'm on zero.
I'm on zero.
It's,
Okay.
I definitely see the benefits, but like Winter Storm Uri, I don't want to be super negative on it, but for you to still go start 3 diesel generators, I have about 30% faith that they would even run
In that cold.
negative 15 degrees. I know they'll have block heaters and they'll have all that jazz and hopefully treated fuel, but the mechanic side of me says it doesn't make a lot of sense.
I also think if people are that concerned, they could buy a generator for themselves. I mean,
You have your people that are on fixed income, I can't do that. You know, I rent my home, I can't do that.
but as a property manager of quite a few homes, I have discussed putting a generator in
see where Wayne's coming to, talking about down the road a ways.
Yeah.
This stuff they're talking about putting in all around us, you would think that some of the people would foresee the strain that it's gonna put and say, no, we're not gonna do that. This was here long before you showed up.
I think, yeah, they'll see those tax dollars and they'll say, build whatever you want, we'll figure out the energy later on because we want the tax dollars to come in and we want it now. And I think that is my number one concern is, you know, and if we keep $150,000 worth of inventory on hand of transformers that would only benefit 2 or 3 people at a time, in my mind, you know, like you have a storm come through, you could utilize more of them, but we're not constantly just swapping out generators nonstop or transformers nonstop. But we have that contingency built in. I'd also like to see maybe the same number of dollars in contingency built in if the whole grid is down so that we can come back up. That would benefit everybody. And that's why I'm like, I don't want to go maybe more than 5%, but just something to sweeten it because everybody will say, yeah, put it here for free and you can own it. But and in 1.7 years is what you had is those reserve funds would be built back up right to where they are today. So if $170,000 breaks the bank on a $640,000 reserve fund that we already have, like we're in bigger trouble than.
Yeah, there is an opportunity cost, but honestly, it's not that big of an opportunity cost if we can make it whole in less than 2 years. But consensus of the council seems to be respond to the RFP at 0%. Is that Mark? Want a motion on that, Stacy?
I don't think it hurts.
I'll make a motion to respond to the RFP at 0%.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded to respond to the RFP on the generator location at a city ownership share of 0%. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right. Last item is, again, something we've talked about in recent meetings, but it's just a presentation on the transient guest tax and how the city can utilize those funds.
Yeah, so just want to provide you some information since this has come up a couple times in the last several meetings on transient guest tax and how it's collected, what we can use it on. So just a reminder, it is collected from overnight stays at our lodging establishments here in town. We do collect 7%. And there is state statute governing transient guest tax, and I've given you a couple of different sections, excerpts from the state statute in your packet, and then I've also got on the TV there. I won't read it to you verbatim, but it outlines what tourism promotion means and how that's collected. And then cities have the opportunity, if they want to, locally pass their own charter ordinances regarding transient guest tax. And that basically charters you out of state statute to have your own local home rule regarding transient guest tax, which we have done. The latest version was adopted in September of 2013. We've had transient guest tax far before that, though. I didn't go back to see how long, but for quite a while, as long as we've had a hotel here in town. So the most current version was from 2013. And it, in section 7, talks about how monies collected can be expended. And there's 2 sections there. Establishing the Convention and Tourism Committee, which you have the tourism board that's appointed by the city council that considers these expenditures and helps to prepare and set the budget in conjunction with myself, the city administrator, and then that comes before you for approval as part of the overall city budget. And then the governing body considers expenditures proposed from the tourism fund by the committee. So you will see those come forth. And in the past, they've been given the expenditure authority as the same as the city administrator, $5,000, because I have the expenditure authority of $5,000. So anything over that has come before the governing body in the past for approval. And our charter ordinance also outlines how these funds can be used, and I won't read off each of these 6 points, but as I mentioned in the previous meeting, really tourism-related promotion and activities is what it covers. So projects, whether it's expansion of city facilities regarding tourism, it can be used to defray some cost of city services for functions. So say if we were having a festival or an event, something that would require public works support or police support, something like that, it can be used to help defray some of those costs. But you'll see that it's really tourism and convention-related activities with the goals of promoting tourism to our community. And then, excuse me, this is a 10-year history of what revenues have been brought in by transient guest tax, what was budgeted each year, how much actual we expended, and then the cash balance over time for the last 10 years. So you can see that fund. We have seen growth of over about $23,000 over the last 10 years in revenues that we've brought in. I think that's due to the expansion of some of our lodging here in the community. Airbnb, the app has started collecting and remitting that as well. So you can see those results over that 10-year period. The budget has fluctuated a little bit. You'll see here in 2017 and 18, those were for specific projects relating to the 10th anniversary at that time. And then I think Big Kansas Road Trip that came here, which covered Kiowa, Comanche, and Barber County. It was a weekend-long event that brought people to the community. So why there was a little bit of a bump there those 2 years. And then also in 2025 and this year, a little bit of an increase for projects that we've discussed previously. You'll see, as mentioned before, that cash balance has grown over time and sits at $329,000 now. And then just a few examples of different projects this has been used for over basically my history of my brain digging back, and Heather and I talked a little bit about some different things that's been used. For quite a while, this has been to half fund the wage and benefits of the tourism Big Well director, and the other half comes from the Big Well fund for that position. We've done a lot of billboards, a variety of print advertising, radio, TV, over the years. Main Street light pole banners, sorry, that should be another bullet. We've replaced those over the years as part of that. Social media marketing as well. Downtown Christmas lights were purchased. The recent Music on Main Street program that was completed. 10th anniversary and Big Kansas Road Trip in 2018 that I mentioned. And then I would say a large amount each year actually goes out into our community for events that get put on. So a lot of times you'll see in our checks, you know, a check to the Twilight Theater or the Triangle Rodeo Club, the Cannonball Golf Course, 547 Arts Center, Historical Museum, all nonprofit organizations and others putting on events here in our community can request those funds, and so a lot of those funds are going out the door to help other organizations put on events with the goal of bringing people to our community. So over the years, we've granted out a significant amount of money back out into the community to host events. We've done a variety of kind of trade show booth promotions over the years. We used to spend the entire 10 days at the Kansas State Fair. We no longer do that, we just go for a weekend. But that was something we did for quite a while to try to attract people to the community. The Kansas Sampler Festival, which was a festival that went on and no longer acts as a festival. Tour Kansas Showcase and the Mother Earth News Fair were all different events that we attended and had a booth at. And then the Greensburg bikes were purchased out of the tourism fund. So that was just some examples. I know there's more things that we've expended them on, but that's just some examples. And I think that was all I have. It's kind of a bird's eye overview, a little bit getting into the nuts and bolts of transient guest tax, but I hope that helps to satisfy maybe some questions that you've had, and I'd be happy to answer, and Heather as well, if you guys have any further questions or want more information than what I gave you.
Council, questions for Stacy or Heather? I'd say it's a few slides back, Stacy, but I think that list of basically how we can use those funds is the important thing to keep in mind in the future when we have requests or ideas of how to use these funds. That's really kind of what we've got to stick to. One question I would have, which it's just thinking kind of like our normal, not necessarily day-to-day expenses, but I would say our city parks, when it comes to either the installation of new features in those parks, new amenities, and or the upkeep of those, that might be a way, a source of funds that could go towards that, the operation of our parks. In my interpretation, but that's just my interpretation.
I would want to do a little research. I know, I think sometimes those questions have been raised, I know on a state level, if those are allowable expenditures. I would say that it would have to be something that is maybe more unique that brings people for sure to town. Excuse me. But yes, that possibly could.
Council, any questions, comment, discussion? Heather, any 2 cents you want to throw in?
Pretty much covers it.
All right, well, hearing no further discussion, we'll just digest that and keep it in mind next time we have a discussion on transient guest tax and how we're spending that money. That is our last item of business tonight, so we will move on to city staff reports.
Public Works has repainted lines, parking lines on Main Street and crosswalks and lines in front of stop signs around town you've probably noticed, and it looks nice and fresh to have nice white lines. I know they have plans to put them a couple other places still, so. We've started work over at the swimming pool, preparing it for the summer season. They were over power washing today, and I know there's some patchwork and a little painting that needs to happen, and then we'll start putting water in. Marcus Mitchell is going to be the pool manager again this year, so he's working on contacting former lifeguards to see if they're interested, and then recruiting some new ones. We have this training scheduled for the lifeguard certification for in May, so things are looking good for that. You might have noticed on Main Street we do have new street pole banners that got put up. The ones that were there previously were put up in 2017 for the 10th anniversary, so they've had a long life, and some of them were starting to show that. The previously approved Kansas Geological Survey core drilling project that was presented to you a month and a half ago or so will begin on Monday the 13th out at the business park. And they do welcome visitors to come out and see what they're doing. I think it'll be pretty interesting to see the core samples that they'll be drilling. But they did ask that any visitors stay outside of their safety area that they will have marked out there. So they do welcome you, but just they want to make sure everybody stays safe. The sidewalk project design work is continuing. Right now it is in an office check with KDOT. And I have reached out to property owners that are adjacent to the project with a letter to invite them to come in and visit. I sent the map as well so they could see where on their property that the sidewalk would go, and sent that out and asked them to stop in and visit if they'd like to. We also have the large map you may have noticed printed out there here in the lobby at City Hall, so as people come in to pay their bills, or if they received the letter and want to see that, it's out there. I'm also going to be at the health fair on Saturday, and we'll have a table set up with this and some other handouts, so if people are interested and curious, they can see where those proposed sidewalks will go. On the 14th at 1 o'clock at the community building, GMD 5, Groundwater Management District 5, will be here. They are holding community meetings in their area, and will be here in Greensburg. If you are interested in attending, I've attached that invitation for you. And the March Police Department from Chief Davis was included in the agenda packet. So if you have any questions for myself or him, happy to answer.
Questions for Stacy? I do have a question remarking on the prep for the pool for this summer. reminded me, I did have a concern expressed about those trees that were transplanted from the school last summer. I know last year, the pool staff helped keep those water, but, I think the concern is, as dry as it's been, they think we might need to water those trees.
They've been
before-
watered,
Okay.
and,
That's just-
and they are leafing out. If you go by, they
Yep.
look pretty good. They've been drowned.
Good, okay.
I fully agree, I fully agree with you on that, talking about, Mr. Jennings is gonna be here about mosquitoes, if it don't rain, we ain't gonna have to worry about it.
Yeah, but we'll have to worry about keeping other things alive instead.
Like flies and things
Yeah.
like that.
Hopefully this weekend, looking at the forecast, we've actually got a
Yeah.
decent chance this weekend, so.
Yeah,
Fingers crossed.
the guys that turned the water on week before last at the pool for that very reason, so
Okay. Good to know.
I can personally vouch that they've been watered.
Any other questions for Stacy? Do we have any governing body comments tonight?
I have, I don't know if you wanna call it a comment, I have a question. On our last utility bill, the newsletter that was in there, down in the bottom right-hand corner, there was a little section there talking about getting permits for your spring projects, your
Yes.
fences and whatnot, and sheds. There's one in there that says no storage containers, a permit.
Correct.
We have them in town now. Or do we let them, do we allow them, or do we not?
That has been a conversation for enforcement that we have discussed.
What do we
I can count about 6
consider?
of them right now, so.
Like the Connex box storage containers.
That's what my brain went.
I'll say one in town right now is just temporary for construction purposes at the art center, and when that siding project is done, that one will go away. But I think you're talking about there's some others in town.
There's one over by the fire station that is going away.
And yes, there's also-
That property is selling and it is going away.
I guess I would maybe defer to the governing body on enforcement. For me, I have a hard time personally where some of those were brought in right after the tornado and they've been here a very long time.
When was that ordinance put into place?
I would have to go back and look.
Prior to or after?
I can't answer that.
I'm not for certain. If it was after, it was real shortly after.
Well, I know there were a lot of them in town
Yes.
after the tornado,
There are
just
a lot-
because.
and there's stuff that says for construction, they are allowed. So when people were building houses, they could put materials in them. Projects like this, they could put materials in them, things like that. But then, after construction, they were to go away. And some
Did not.
did not.
I just wondered.
What was the rationale behind not having them?
Aesthetics,
You don't want people making buildings out of them and stuff.
which you can make buildings out of them. There have to be, there's rules to that, but you could make a structure out of
I
it.
fully agree with that,
Yeah.
you can.
We had somebody suggest making a shed out of them, a large shed, using two on either side, putting a roof. And so there was conversation of how they could make that to blend in with the neighborhood, but still use those boxes. So there's ways to do it. We had a business owner, or a business proposition right after the tornado to bring them in and build a restaurant using those boxes. And that was a conversation and it just never happened. So there's ways to do it, but it says for outdoor storage, unless it's like in an enclosed area in the industrial zone, I think, in a fenced area, then they can be used, but just like in a residential property or on Main Street, they've not been allowed for years, and I don't know for sure when the actual ordinance was passed.
I was just reading that, and I see
Yeah.
it.
And
So I just started randomly looking
I think,
as I was going down the street, and I thought, oh, do we allow it or do we not? Because we're saying no here, but yet we have it. To me, it's like chickens. We're spending more chickens in town than you realize, the people that apply for it. So. I'm not trying to raise a stink.
I was gonna say there are. Okay,
Through there, I don't notice them.
I'm just asking. Somebody comes in and says, I can't have a storage container, but my neighbor down the street a block has got one. But you say no. So what do we tell them?
well, I guess I would ask for the will of the governing body. Do you want us to send letters to those existing ones and get them out of here?
I think a good place to start would be find out exactly when the ordinance was adopted, because there could well be some that predate that, and then, okay, they're grandfathered in.
I don't have a problem with that. Maybe there's some logic in this ordinance that we don't know about.
Well, and I think that's kind of how we've been operating, is kind of a grandfathering principle because of post-tornado and needing storage, construction, all of that, and then they've just remained. And I think putting in the newsletter was more to prevent future ones coming.
I do know where there is some, I don't know whether you classify them as actually storage containers, that's what they're used for. But before you became administrator, just prior to that, they were sent a letter. It gave so long to get the place cleaned up, and that was one issue that was in that letter, and it was never finished.
And I think part of it has been, again, what does the governing body want us to do? Because we can send letters, but are you gonna back us up? Because that's been with previous code enforcement officers, that has been the question raised to me, is if I were to send out, and it doesn't have to be storage boxes, it could be anything. If I were to address this, that's been a long-standing something in our community, will the governing body back me up? Or if somebody comes in yelling, I've had this forever, are you gonna say, well, then it's okay? That's been a question with previous employees. So that's why she's asking, what's the will of the body? Do you want us to send out a letter? Do you want us
I
to?
understand what you're
Yeah.
saying.
For
As
like,
long as we're on the same page.
But if we're gonna do that time and time again, you can't have one, but you can, because you've had one 3 years longer than he has. Then where are we at then?
Yeah, no,
Do we enforce it or do we not?
we've had that conversation.
I'm sure we have, yeah.
for like a pre-built shed, do we have a code for it to be anchored? I was wondering if that's somewhere along the lines, these aren't properly
We tell
secured?
every single one of them to be anchored, and we have, shed builders telling them that they don't have to. And so knowing that, I now say, they're going to tell you you don't have to, and I'm telling you you do, because if something happens and that blows into your neighbor's house, you are liable because I've told you.
I know these storage containers are significantly heavy,
Yeah,
but I wonder if that's somewhere where that ordinance maybe stemmed from, is they're not secured, so they are deemed temporary buildings, or temporary, and they shouldn't be, become a permanent structure.
I can do some research on that, of when that was put into place and provide some more information to you.
I think that'd be helpful just to know context.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Sure would, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
Do we do it or do we not?
yeah,
well, and it's been discussed, I know, on the building side, just because times have changed, and you see in some urban areas, people using them. I mean, in Florida, it's been a popular thing to use them for years as recycled material to build things out of. It's just not something that was popular here, so much. It was mostly just for storage. So there's been conversations for years of what do we do when somebody wants to build a house with them? What do we do when somebody wants to build a shed?
There's places up the country right now that have it.
Yeah,
I know 2 places where they're buried underground and houses are sitting on top of it.
yeah, and used for shelter, yeah.
Well, maybe just some research on our current ordinance and its history and go from there.
yeah,
That's what I'm saying, I'd like to see what,
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Cecil will do the research and we'll talk about it at a future meeting.
I guess we could look too, we have a book that has all
That's
that
true.
ourselves.
No, and
Yeah.
that's
I really like the
Online.
PowerPoint. If
Yeah.
you could do a storage unit, power unit, or PowerPoint for us for the next meeting, that'd be
Careful what you ask for.
Sorry, I brought that up.
I have this long cable for a reason.
Not compatible with my tablet.
Yeah, just depending on how new that TV is. Usually now they can do it wirelessly.
Yeah.
but-
Yeah.
Not that new.
All right, do we have any other governing body comments tonight?
Kind of question as well, are we made any progress with, the no parking situation up there?
Yes, I'm waiting on an answer from a proposal I have presented before I move forward presenting you something.
It seems like as time goes on, you just see them migrating, even though we haven't posted anything.
Correct.
Like,
Maybe the word's out that we're talking about
they're
it.
drifting in places I haven't seen them in most of the time.
Yeah,
So I was just curious, because rough math, say 10 trucks a night since we first started talking about this, which generally is more. That's roughly 400 trucks been parked on the city streets since we first discussed this. And they ain't doing us any favors.
It's not that I'm not working on it. I have a proposal I'm waiting to hear back on before I present something to you. Thank you for asking.
Any other governing body comments or questions for Stacy? Hearing none, that does bring us to the end of the agenda tonight. So we will conclude the meeting and adjourn it. Thanks for your time, everybody.